guys, this is Basinger313 here, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Compare and Contrast, where we put in two separate games and compete them to see which one is superior. And in this week's episode, we are dabbling into an established franchise that was inspired by its original incarnation versus a reboot of that original incarnation. Normally, it would make sense for me to compare the first Tomb Raider and Uncharted games to see how they both compare to each other, or hell, even the first reboot of Tomb Raider, but I don't own those games. Maybe in the future. I chose these two games specifically because these two are the ones I'm more familiar with, and they happen to be released somewhat of the same year. Not too close, but I think 2 years is a good enough comparison. Plus, I relatively enjoy both of these games anyway, so I think it'll be a good experience for me to see which one is better, in my opinion. So, will the inspired be the winner, or will the inspired of the inspired be the winner? This is Uncharted 3: Drake's Deception versus Tomb Raider 2013. Uncharted 3 starts off with a negotiation in a London bar, mostly known as a pub, accompanied by our main protagonist, Nathan Drake, and his mentor/father figure, Victor Sullivan, nicknamed Sully. The main negotiator, Talbot, is the main customer for this deal. The price? Nathan's ring for a bunch of money. It's never specified exactly how much, but let's just say it's a lot of money. After authentication, the ring turns out to be real. However, the money is fake, and dispute erupts into a bar fight. Sully and Nathan escape, but also get cornered by Talbot's men, accompanied also by Catherine Marlowe. She takes the ring after some rivalry banter, but Cutter, one of the henchmen of Talbot, straight up kills Drake and Sully. No joke, they just straight up died. Is this Metal Gear Solid 2? And then afterwards, it flashbacks to Drake's backstory 20 years ago, somewhere in Colombia, where he himself investigates the treasure behind Sir Francis Drake. Okay, odd mood whiplash, but let's just roll with it for now. I'm pretty sure this is gonna come up later. He investigates the museum which holds the item Nathan needs to get. However, with many suspicions aroused, it's going to be difficult with a lot of witnesses around. Interestingly enough, another fellow treasure hunter seems to be after the same treasure, and who is that? Why, it's none other than a younger version of Sully. We stalk him for a while until we found out he's making fake keys to unlock the artifact, and so Drake attempts to steal it. Unfortunately, he gets caught, forcing him to return his wallet. However, Drake, being the sneaky devil he is, actually did steal the key after all. At the brink of nighttime, it is time to infiltrate. And get caught again. God, Drake, you're not really good at this, are you? We attempt to escape, but eventually get cornered by gunpoint. Thankfully, Sully is there to rescue us as he knocks down one of the henchmen chasing us. We hide about at a restaurant, and while Drake is hesitant to give any information to Sully, they eventually warm up to each other. Sully promises to teach Drake a couple of new tricks, and the rest was history. Oh, and speaking of history, they're f***ing dead! Nah, just kidding. It's actually part of a plot to get info on Catherine's hideout, in fact. Cutter is actually a mole inside Marlowe's gang, and secretly working with us. That blood on our chest? Totally fake. We also got Chloe working alongside with us. Wow, I've covered 2 Chloes this season. That's gotta be a pretty common name. Chloe's spying on Talbot's men and notices that they went to an abandoned building, but when entering, there is no car to be seen. Further investigation shows that there is indeed a secret base hidden inside. Our 3 main protagonists heads in and finds a big library wealth of information. Retrieving the book and necklace back, our 4 heroes are split up into 2 teams, one traveling into an old mansion at the French chateau, and somewhere in Syria, located in a citadel, with Nathan and Sully going into the former and Chloe and Cutter going for the latter. While traveling, it turns out Talbot and his men are already onto them, and so they ambush them, attempting to kill and leave them for dead. However, these spider-looking creatures force Talbot and his men to flee, leaving our 2 main protagonists alive and escapes. But Talbot, just for safety precautions, torches the place down in an attempt that they do not escape. Luckily for us, we do, but we know that Chloe and Cutter are also in danger, so we make haste into the citadel. And in actuality, they are safe and sound. Talbot's men, on the other hand, are there. However, they have not gotten caught yet, so they are perfectly safe. Get down! They are not safe. Luckily, we happen to have a sniper rifle conveniently placed on the pathway to our escape. We eventually arrive towards the destination, as our 4 heroes need to find an entryway to another tomb. Unfortunately, Cutter got shot by a tranquilizing drug that seems to make him go crazy, and not trust Drake. On top of that, the drug forces him to lose his weapon, and the journal that details the events and puzzles within the tomb. Our 3 heroes notice this, but Cutter, being uncooperative due to the effects of the drug, has forced our heroes to be extra careful with him. And by being extra careful, I mean leaving Drake all alone by himself. With him. Unsurprisingly, this does not go well, as Cutter nearly kills Drake until Sully snaps him back into reality. The drug appears to no longer be effect, but tension between him and our heroes remain hostile. We found the treasure, as Cutter keeps guard of it, and our next objective is to escape, which Talbot predicted we'll do anyway, so we ended up with more surrounding. Cutter seems to still be an effect of the drug, and that forces him to aim his weapon to the group, and Talbot demands them to drop their weapons. Unfortunately, he also commands them to shoot them, but regardless, it turns out Cutter was actually acting this entire time and the effect of the drug was fake. He shoots Talbot, letting our heroes to escape. While escaping, 3 of our heroes manage to jump off a tower, but because the bridge broke, Cutter is unable to jump overboard, leading him to an alive Talbot, who we assume to die from the gunshot. It's never really explained how he survived the gunshot, but Cutter is surrounded and he is forced to give Talbot and Catherine the treasure, and in return, she blows him up with gasoline in a match. Jesus, you should never trust these guys whatsoever. With no other choice, Cutter has jumped over, but in the process, he also broke his leg. Thankfully, however, our heroes escape, albeit with Cutter's disability, and because of that, he's unable to participate in any further missions, alongside Chloe, who wants to help him recover, and not wanting to deal with Drake's shenanigans. So the rest of our journey, it's going to be Drake and Sully from now on as they travel to Yemen with a familiar face. It's Elena, who managed to get us permits to Yemen, as long as we act like journalists rather than treasure hunters, which Elena immediately knows as Drake acts all coy about the situation. With more traveling, they discover another tomb and the location of the Lost City. However, they also learn that Sir Francis Drake discovers the location of the Lost City as well, and there's a clear reason why he abandoned the mission. Regardless of the factor, Drake still wants to pursue this treasure. We escape the tomb only for Drake to be shot by a hallucinogenic dart that causes Cutter to become crazy as well. Drake fears for his life as everything becomes a huge drug trip, and after his relapse, he is captured by Marlowe and Talbot. Marlowe talks to Drake about his relationship with Sully and how he should not be trusted. I don't know about you, but after 2 games of life and death situations, yeah, it makes sense that Drake's not buying it. Eventually, they get a hold of Sully's location as he attempts to escape and save him, but gets knocked out by a pirate named Ramses and gets stowed away after he wakes up. Ramses interrogates Drake to see if they could secure any more information, but he refuses. Not having any more time wasters, Ramsey states that Sully is held hostage here as well, but that's not gonna make Drake confess about anything. In fact, that actually gives us motivation to escape and locate where Sully is being held. Drake locates Sully as it seems that he's tied up in a chair with a bag over his head, but it turns out to be just a fake body, and Sully was never actually captured to begin with. The ship is sinking after the amount of damage it sustained, so we need to escape pronto. He escapes the ship, but is left unconscious by the ocean. Thankfully, he is rescued ashore at a beach and manages to locate Elena's whereabouts. But unfortunately, Sully has been captured by Marlowe's henchmen, located somewhere in the Rub al-Khali desert. Their idea is to infiltrate an airplane on the way to the desert, so they chase after it with an enormous chase scene, leaving Elena behind and Drake hidden inside the plane. Unfortunately, he gets caught, but after an extraneous fight scene, the plane crashes down and our heroes survive via parachute. So for the rest of our journey, Drake sets off afoot, while further being hallucinated, this time being the hot desert, such as revisiting an empty well, believing Sully is present when in actuality it's just his mind, until he finally reaches to an abandoned town and stocks up with some water. Bad news for him though, Talbot's men are also there, and they're after his blood after the plane crash, even going as far as sending a military tank. Fortunately for us, we are rescued by a group of men on horseback, in particular this guy named Salim. He tells us about Sully's location and agrees to help us out on one condition: make sure Talbot, Marlowe, and anyone else doesn't awaken King Solomon, who was entrapped inside the Lost City. Reunite with Sully, our new sets of heroes venture through the sandstorm, but it's split up due to the low visibility. Drake and Sully finally reaches to Ubar, the Lost City, as they are surprised at how the city still functions even after all these years. The buildings are still standing, the water is drinkable, and...
What? No. No. Please. Sully.
Sully dies? What the f***? They killed him? This, of course, enrages Drake, as it should, as he chases off after Talbot and Catherine, and going into the city deeper into the depths below, we are sent to hell, with demons ruling over the place and more hallucinations, such as seeing Sully once again and becoming younger again. He eventually comes into his senses and finds out Sully is actually alive. Oh, thank God, thank God, thank God. Oh, that was a close one. I was about to, jump off this household right here and just head up to Naughty Dog's headquarters and demand the CEO's shoved up in a stack, but okay, I don't think I really need to do that. Where's my angry orchid? So, yeah, all of what happened was just another hallucination, this time due to the Jinn's curse after drinking the fountain water. Because of the properties of what's stored inside the poison water supply, Marlowe plans on extracting the water, but our 2 main characters destroy the device. This, however, causes a sinkhole and engulfs the entire city into the bottom of the desert. So we need to escape fast, while at the same time avoiding Marlowe and Talbot. Eventually they corner us, but with more unfortunate timing, Catherine is stuck within the quicksand. Drake, being the good-natured boy he is, tries to save her, But it's too late. This further angers Talbot even after we attempt to make amends with him. He tries to kill Nathan even at the cost of his own life. However, he dies after getting shot, and within the ongoing sinkhole, our two main characters escape thanks to Salim extracting them from the ongoing disaster. The two return back to Yemen as Sully gives him a wedding ring, possibly to propose to Elena, and officially tying the knot as the game ends with them walking to a new seaplane, awaiting for more adventures. Uncharted 3 overall is a fun ride throughout every chapter and with personality. While I don't personally think it's as good as Uncharted 2's storytelling, I had a lot of fun going through Nathan Drake's adventures. Characters are also bright and entertaining, and the villains are certainly memorable in their own evil ways. Some characters such as Ramsey somewhat get shoved along the side and don't get too much development, but for the most part the new characters introduced, like Cutter, are very likable and entertaining. I kinda wish Cutter and, to a certain extent, Chloe gets a little more spotlight, as the last time we get to see them was a Syrian Temple chapter. Cutter was at the very least excusable since, you know, broken leg and all that, but Chloe on the other hand just stops caring about treasure hunting altogether, and I sort of feel that's out of character for her. Other than that, every other veteran character still acts as how they would normally act. The relationship between Nathan and Sully are always endearing, and I'm glad Nathan and Elena finally got married as a legit couple. If you played any of the previous games, you know that these two make a very good pair. It was overall a satisfying story for the third game in the entry. We start off Tomb Raider with a sinking ship as Lara Croft, or how the English would say, Lara Croft, attempt to escape but fails. She is washed up ashore as her group of friends are present, but they are unable to hear her, and then... Falcon Punch! She gets captured and bounded by hanging ornaments, but she manages to escape by burning the cloth she was bounded by, and lands on a piece of barbed wire. Ouch. She attempts to escape only to see a horrifying image of a bound up woman tied up and killed. As she finds a way out, she is interrupted by a man who claims to want to help her, but I don't know about you, I don't think grabbing her leg is a good sign of solidarity. Anyways, we find a way to escape, but the cave is being collapsed, so she needs to escape fast and pronto. And she does so, only to realize the despair that she has to go through for the entirety of the game. She searches around the island and finds a campfire with Sam's belongings, one of them being a broken walkie-talkie and a camera where she left a video recording, and thanks to that, we're able to learn the personalities and characters that journeyed with us for this exhibition. We got treasure hunter Laura herself, Sam, a descendant of the great Himiko, Roth, our mentor and captain, Grim, an old man with plenty of old-timey time stories, who is also the sailor of this operation, Whitman, a self-proclaimed archaeologist with a somewhat arrogant personality, Reyes, a generic black girl, Alex, a generic white nerd, and Jonah, a spiritual beefcake. None of these characters are really that important. In fact, out of all these characters, only Roth, Sam, and Whitman are of note, since they pertain more significantly to the plot, whereas everyone else just exist. The operation is to travel towards the Dragon's Triangle in order to locate the Yamatai hidden within the Queen Himiko's tomb, and in present day, Laura needs to eat, so she goes hunting, finding herself a bow and some arrows from a dead corpse. She hunts for a deer in order to extract their meat for edibility. Going back to the campfire, Roth manages to get in contact with the broken walkie-talkie as he advises Laura to regroup at Roth's location. She does so by traveling inside a hidden underground base where she discovers a bunch of raw rotting meat and a pry axe, something that's needed in order to break through the doors. She comes across another campfire and sees Sam alongside Matthias, a man who's been trapped in this island for a while now. Sam shares her story about Himiko as that leads Laura to fall asleep. As she wakes up, both Sam and Matthias are missing. Laura searches more, but gets trapped by a bear trap. She is safe thanks to the group of her friends, but are still missing two members, Roth and Sam. Laura and Whitman team up in order to find Roth, while everyone else, Alex, Grim, Reyes, and Jonah, search for Sam. Guys, I think this is somewhat of an imbalanced team. There's 2 guys over here and 4 guys over here. I don't think that's gonna work well. So while we're on our search, we get ambushed by the bad guys, and despite our plea, Whitman decides to surrender. Laura decides to attack back instead, but gets knocked out. The big bad Russian orders his soldiers to kill everyone in sight, except for Laura. What's his motivation to keep her alive? What do you think? So, yeah, we kill this creep who's named Vladimir. Not sure why they bother giving him a name if he dies in the same scene he's introduced. We escape and try to find any more survivors. We eventually find Roth, however he's severely injured, and the med pack is inside the wolf cave, so Laura confronts the big bad wolf and extracts the med kit back to Roth. While lamenting about the dire situations, Roth tells Laura to go to a radio tower and get into contact in order to secure an LZ. Before we get to the objective, during a campfire rest, we reminisce about the good old days that happened before all the shipwreck shenanigans, such as Alex flirting on Rey's underage daughter, and she does not approve of that. Speaking of her though, it seems as though she has a thing going on with Roth. We eventually do what we are told and are successful with the mission, and so we reach the destination where the helicopter is supposed to land, only for it to be struck by lightning and crash with a mysterious voice saying, "No one leaves." So it's off to rescue the helicopter pilot who survives the crash, and he's dead! Well, so much for that plan B. We reunite with Roth, and thanks to our walkie-talkie, we learn that Sam has been kidnapped by Matthias. Roth tells Laura that sacrifices need to be made, but Laura is determined to save everyone, starting with Sam. Going into the old Japanese temple, we are ambushed by more bad guys, but circumstances say that the Oni saved us at the cost of being kidnapped by them. We are bound inside the temple, surrounded by lots of dead bodies, as she exclaims this.
I hate tombs.
Oh shit! I forgot, this game's actually called Tomb Raider! God, I love me some old referential humor from time to time, you know that?
Not in a million years.
Hey, you shut the fuck up, Dante. We learn more lore about Queen Himiko as Sam gets into contact with us. She said the reason why Matthias is so interested in her was due to her genetic inheritance being related to Himiko, and totally not because, well, she's Japanese. I'd like to thank everyone for my Call of Duty Black Ops 1 vs. Black Ops 2 episode. That was a horrible joke. I do apologize for that. It'll never happen again. So I have disposed of it. You're very welcome. We plan on sacrificing her by doing a ritual called the Ascension. Regardless of whether or not she is completely linked to Himiko's bloodline or not, all hinders if she's related or not. Well, it's a lose-lose situation for everyone if that's the case, so our main protagonist Laura wants it to be a win-lose situation instead, so we're off to save Sam. While doing so, we come across Grim, who is held hostage. We plan on saving him, but instead he sacrifices himself in order to save us. Roth shows up to help Laura as she continues to head into the fire shrine thanks to Roth's sniping skills. Laura manages to locate Sam, but the ritual has already begun, and to make things worse, Laura gets captured and is forced to witness the murder of her own friend, only for her to be saved by a gust of wind blowing. This convinces Matthias that she is in fact a descendant of Himiko. Laura escapes, and it seems that our other friends, yeah, remember them, are captured after an attempt to rescue Sam as well, so we rescue them, and on time too, because the rescue chopper arrives. But Laura is determined to save Sam no matter what, so she forces the chopper to land. This causes the chopper to crash, leaving Laura unconscious. Thankfully, Roth saves her with CPR. Unfortunately, enemies invade and wounds Roth in the process. He kills them before dying himself. Laura mourns for his death and discovers that the storm is not natural and it is connected to Queen Himiko. We meet up with the other survivors, including Whitman, who we accuse of being a double agent. The group doesn't want any more animosity, so nothing bad happens. However, they will keep a close eye on Whitman. On another note, Alex seems to have gathered parts for the ship in order for us to escape, but he's surrounded by bad guys, so Laura tries to save him. We found him stuck inside a tanker, so we need to find a way to extract him out. We managed to get into the same room, however the pipes are too heavy to pick up. He suggests that Laura needs to grab the materials needed to escape the island, as he sacrifices himself. Laura refuses this idea, but Alex reiterates that this is the only thing he could do. Laura kisses him, leaving him behind to fend off against the bad guys. We got the stuff, but we also want to save Sam as well. Reyes gives us a time limit in order to get the job done. We discover the location where Sam is being held hostage thanks to some tomb raiding. Damn, it only took us to the end of the game to finally get what we were supposed to be doing in the first place. If this game wants to be more accurate, it should be called Let Me Get the F*** Out of Here. We were right back to our comrades, only to discover that Whitman did in fact betray us and send a group of bad guys out to Reyes and Jonah's location. We see them and know the location where Sam is being held hostage. We arrive there and Whitman gets killed by the Oni so that Matthias can bait them into a distraction. We arrive to the top of the mountain and get into a battle with Matthias, eventually killing him and saving Sam. With the four together, at last, we finally escape the island and await our next adventure. I think the story overall is pretty basic. It's nothing too epic or amazing, but I certainly did enjoy my time. Laura honestly feels a little too bland for me. She's not entertaining. She's more of the type of main character I think the player has to attach to. I guess in that aspect she's fine. I was just hoping she had a little bit more personality than just, I'm given this task, so let's do that. I think she's supposed to have some sort of character breakdown during the, rape scene, where she killed someone for the first time and has an emotional breakdown, but afterwards, she seems to be perfectly fine mass murdering everyone in her path. I think this is either a missed opportunity or an unnecessary motif. Either they should have expanded upon the idea of her unwilling to kill, or just ignore the plot point altogether. I think honestly, just letting her be a mass murderer she is gonna be fine as long as they don't build up the idea that she's not a killer. I want to talk about all the other characters too as well, since they're pretty much bad, if not worse. Okay, that's a little harsh for me. I do like Roth. He's a caring father figure to Laura, and Sam's a good girlfriend slash potential love interest. Both of them having somewhat of a romantic thing going on, I think. I can't tell. I think it's just a girl thing or a romantic thing, so, I don't know, I'm not a girl. The term damsel in distress is a trope that mostly has sub-negative connotations, but how Tomb Raider handled this trope was very well done. During the ritual, we don't actually know if Sam is related to Himiko, so the idea of will she survive the ritual or die becomes a lot more dire. She's also a pretty likable character too, nothing too interesting, but not too hateable by any means. She clearly has some sort of bond between Laura, so of course as a player, we are motivated to save her. Alex does also have a love interest towards Laura as well, being that he was the first to volunteer to join Laura, only to be interrupted by Whitman, and the one who eventually gets the kiss he wanted after he dies. Him and every other character I haven't mentioned really should have been explored more. I think it's possible that they're trying to serve more of an impact for future sequels, but I can't say for certain if I care for these characters all that much, and when they die, it sucks, yeah, but it's not like they were good characters by any means. They didn't relate too much to the story, and it would have been easy to ignore them completely if we were focusing on the main story. They do get some journal logs, but that's purely optional. The only death I felt some impact with is Roth, but that's about it. This idea kind of comes alongside with the villain as well, Matthias. He seems like a very standardized villain, manipulative and powerful, sure, but otherwise pretty bland. Whitman, on the other hand, I kinda like. I feel his villainous side was hinted too obviously, but otherwise, he's the type of villain I feel is more entertaining and douchey enough for me to hate, and when he finally gets his comeuppance, it's sort of therapeutic. Something I noticed during the voice acting, interestingly enough, is that Laura's name is constantly pronounced differently. However, there seems to be a consistency to them. All the American actors pronounce her name as Laura, but all the British actors pronounce her name as Lara, how it's originally intended. It's pretty clear throughout this entire episode that I pronounced the American way, but I'm not sure if this is the intended decision on the director's part, or something that just came naturally with the voice actors. On one hand, it can be viewed as an inconsistency, but on the other hand, it could also be viewed as somewhat of an in-joke, poking fun of how Americans constantly mispronounce her name, including myself. I personally don't really care how one pronounces a fictional character's name, as long as there's some sort of close resemblance towards how the name is pronounced. But I'm leaning towards inconsistency with the voice direction, mostly because the game is a lot more serious in nature. As for the voice acting themselves, they range from pretty good to decent enough. Kind of feels like a B-movie in a way. The actors just doing their job, and they do a fine enough job. Can't say anything more about the Japanese or Russian actors in the game since I don't speak those languages, therefore judging them would be difficult for me. But overall, all the English voice actors do a decent job. They know how to emote properly, and while there are some moments where I think they're kind of phoning it in, it's nothing too drastic, so it gets a solid meh. Between the two, they certainly do have different styles. I do believe the Uncharted series is a lot more comedic and lighthearted compared to the dark and dramatic Tomb Raider. However, there are some dramatic moments in Uncharted as well, so I think Uncharted has the advantage. Most of the characters introduced and returning are very entertaining compared to Tomb Raider's cast of Scooby-Doo knockoffs. There are some that get the job done, and some that are equally as entertaining, but Uncharted has every character entertaining, so that's something I could easily say with Uncharted that I can't really say with Tomb Raider. And so I think Uncharted 3 won the story section. It had a better story overall, a better character development, and it was a very good balance between comedic and humor. Now, I think Tomb Raider had the better premise for what makes a good story, but Uncharted 3 definitely executed it a lot better. But that's just for the story. What about the gameplay? Okay, before I continue, I'd like to add that for both of these games, I was playing using my somewhat broken PS3 controller. For some reason, the controller was acting up by inputting a bunch of D-pad commands when I didn't intend it to. I managed to fix this by actually opening up the PS3 controller and putting some piece of duct tape where the D-pad commands are, so there's a little bit more resistance. But I just need to mention that in case anyone questions why my weapon selects are acting all haywire. Uncharted 3 is a linear third-person shooter with major platforming elements and puzzles. And a lot of these puzzles range from pretty interesting to somewhat straightforward. However, if whenever you are stuck in a puzzle for a short period of time, the game does give you a hint, and after several minutes after that, the game straight up tells you the answer by having either Drake or one of his companions solve it for us. You can disable this if you're really adamant about solving the puzzle on your own, as in order to even get the hint in the first place, you had to press one of the D-pad commands. So thankfully, you are free to ignore this if you please. Tomb Raider also has puzzle elements as well, however I don't think they're as creative. The side missions do give you some of a challenge, but for the main missions, they're pretty straightforward, and for whatever reason, if you're stuck on them, they just straight up give you the answer. Unlike Uncharted, however, they automatically give you the answer straight up, and you can't disable it. I like the way Uncharted handles hints. It gives you the option to get the hints and answers, whereas Tomb Raider, it somewhat punishes you for being too slow on the puzzles. Both have shooting mechanics that are relatively the same. However, Tomb Raider does have the advantage of having RPG mechanic. You upgrade Laura along the way by improving her guns and archery abilities. This gives Laura a sense of progression. Of course, none of these are actually needed, so if you want to ignore them, you are free to do so. Both games also have stealth elements that are pretty underutilized. Not a lot of areas require you to be stealthy, with the exception of this one Tomb Raider section where you are stripped away from your weapons. These are mostly secondary game mechanics and somewhat rewards you with progression or experience, but taking them all down guns a-blazing is an equal enough viable tactic. All in all, these two games are rather similar to each other, and I think both of their negatives balance out their positives. Uncharted 3 has better puzzles, while Tomb Raider has better combat. However, I'm going to give the point to Tomb Raider in this one, mostly because the majority of both of these games were relish in combat, and since Tomb Raider has the better combat, it wins by default. If the puzzles and combat throughout both of their games were balanced, I think it would have been on equal footing, but roughly around 70% of Uncharted and 90% of Tomb Raider will revolve more on combat, and Tomb Raider seems to know what to focus on more. Now, like I said, it was a close match, so Uncharted could have also been the winner as well, so if you think that they should have gotten the point, then hey, I won't complain. But with the scores tied up, it's all up to the presentation to see which one is superior. Graphically speaking, I believe Uncharted overall looks the best. With a shade of colorful scenery, fantastic lip syncing, and mocap animation, a lot of Uncharted's graphical capabilities needs to be commended. I swear, Drake's bearded shadow never looks so smooth, and how does he look so good with that? Well, if you want your face to look as buttery smooth as Nathan Drake over there, and boy do I got a deal for you, as this episode is sponsored by Dollar Shave Club. Sign up for the subscription and get this code below, and you can also get... Wait, what? We're not actually sponsored? You didn't get sponsorship? Hold on 1 second. This is also one of those games where graphics actually affect the gameplay. During parkour section, the ledges tend to have this golden looking color. Not all of them have it, unfortunately, but the colors to progress are distinct enough to catch the player's attention. I usually use the term military shooter graphics in somewhat of a negative light, but Uncharted manages to make sure to differentiate what's important in the scenery compared to what's not the focus. Tomb Raider kinda does this too. Some of the yellow edges are vibrant enough, but the graphics still look a little too dull for me. Character models do look nice and distinct, and I will say, even with these side characters who don't really do much for the story, they do have very unique character design. The use of these characters from different races and color palettes, it makes me feel that they're more unique. Japanese culture is also a very strong motif for this game, and I think they nailed it pretty well. From the Oni enemies, the calligraphy of the shrines/temples, they work very nicely. However, Uncharted also seems to have this in equal spades as well. I'm surprised they managed to make something so basic as a desert setting look so eye-appealing. I think it has to do with the fractal patterns on the desert sand. Most of these special effects work very well too, with planes crashing, planes chasing, car chasing, and the drug hallucination effects as well. This game does have the advantage of not being a humongous sandbox game, so the amount of polygons able to be produced should be credited because of that fact. On top of that, the game manages to play in a good solid 30 frames per second. Not 60 that I usually wanted, but at the very least, I never see the game stutter at all. Nor did I ever see the game load for me too. The only loading screen I've ever saw was the very beginning of the game when you started off. Afterwards, everything seems to flow very seamlessly. Cutscenes transition well between gameplay, and deaths don't have their own loading screens at all. It does take a while for me to save manually though. I feel like I need to mention that. Tomb Raider also plays in 30 frames per second as well, however I do notice some performance issues in very intensive areas. The game also reloads the level for every death, and speaking of which, can I just say that the world that Lara Croft lives in seems to really hate her guts? These death animations are something to completely marvel at. I'm not sure if I should be disturbed by this fetish, or compliment the animators for the amount of creative deaths she has. I'm serious. Some of these look straight off out of Mortal Kombat, it's very unsettling. In terms of glitches, Uncharted doesn't really present too much aside from some animation issues. However, there was this one moment in the game where I'm supposed to press the triangle button and go to this door, but the prompt never showed up. It was only until I reset the game where it finally gave it to me. That being said, glitches are aplenty with Tomb Raider. Not too much to break the game, but enough for me to question the game's coding. Like invisible enemies, or being stuck in a corner, or maybe you're into... two inanimate objects mating? In conclusion, Uncharted seems to be my favorite out of the two, but Tomb Raider is still fun, so it doesn't hurt to try both of these games out. This was a pretty close competition. I had a lot of fun figuring out which one I liked the most. And hey, if you guys happen to like Tomb Raider slightly more than Uncharted 3, then you know what? I'm not gonna be surprised. Honestly, these two games are relatively very similar to one another. That's hard to make a very definitive version as to what makes the better game, because I think it all hitters down to opinion. as to what you guys would like more than the other. For example, I happen to like Uncharted 3 slightly more than Tomb Raider, but if the other way around was also the pretense and the answer to this video, then it's not going to make much of a difference, honestly, since both these two games are very good in their own way. But anyways, yeah, that has been today's episode of Compare and Contrast. It's a shame that I didn't really get that Dollar Shave Club sponsorship, though. I did try, though, but I didn't really get a reply by the time this video uploads, so legally I'm unable to, you know, sponsor them and all that, though. But I did kind of name drop them. It's I wonder how that's gonna happen. But hey, if you guys want me to make it big in the world, then feel free to like, favorite, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I know that sounds like a little bit like e-begging, I do realize that, but this is honestly a very good indication for me to see if this show is actually doing that well or not, because if you guys really do like it, then I will make more of it. That's simple as that, though, although I might probably make more of it just because I'm having a lot more fun trying to do this type of video as well, but whatever. And like I said, you guys are also free to dislike this video as well. I just hope that you guys, if you do so, give me some sort of like feedback or comment as to how I can make this show better, because I definitely do realize that this is not necessarily the perfect all go-to show for you guys, but hey, that is what you guys are for. This is, I'm awaiting any and all feedback, and I will graciously appreciate any of them. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. This is Basinger, signing out. I swear to God, that better not be another dude with a gun. What?
What?
Oh, it's a laptop.
No, but that's not.
Sorry. I didn't mean. No. It's my fault. Don't worry. I was definitely acting a lot more hostile. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. I will take this letter if you. Thank you. I hope you understand. Okay. You too. Good. All right. Bye. Got a letter for some reason. I don't know what this is for. Maybe Dollar Shave Club after all got my sponsorship or something. Who knows? But what is this about? Holy tits! I'm making big in the world!